All right, as you heard, the jury not coming back with the recommendation of the death sentence. You could see the life sentence, and you heard the judge say that right there.
Really a stunned courtroom today, filled with friends, family, because we heard over and over the aggravating versus the mitigating. And the mitigating were those extenuating circumstances. We know dozens were presented, and that was on the defense to do. They wanted to preserve their client's life. And from the looks of it, by the jury's recommendation, that's exactly what was done in the courtroom today. Not a done deal yet. You heard the judge say that we were going to come back in November. We do want to go out to WPTV anchor Michael Williams. He is live outside the Broward County Courthouse. Michael, set the scene for us. We know that most of the story is still in that courtroom, but what are you hearing? What is the reaction from what you can gather?
You at home saw the reaction for yourselves as I stand outside the Broward County Courthouse with Douglas Rudman, a defense lawyer, former prosecutor, and we'll be talking to you in just a moment, Doug. As we look back on at the scene in the courtroom, you saw the families, tears, oftentimes shaking their heads in disbelief, bowing their heads. One young man whose brother was among the victims stood up after the verdict, or the recommendation, I should say, was rendered. You now see family members walking out of the courtroom. The bottom line here, life in prison without the possibility of parole for now 24-year-old Nikolas Cruz. The jury had before it, and I'll bring Douglas Rudman in, 3 counts. If there was going to be a death penalty recommendation or recommendations for one or all 17 of these victims, it had to be unanimous. And what was confusing to some people was the fact that Douglas Rudman, as to count 1, the jury did find unanimously that all the aggravating factors existed. Among them, this was a cold, cruel, calculated, heinous crime. But they had counts 2 and 3 to consider too. Talk about those and why it ultimately means life in prison.
Yeah, and I don't like to use the word counts. I would call them elements, or call them check marks they have to make, essentially.
Plain English, what happened there?
Plain English is this. The jury had to make a decision if first the government had met their burden, had shown that these crimes, these murders were committed in an atrocious, malicious manner with premeditation. And then if the answer to that is yes,
and it was,
and unanimous, then they move on to the second part of the analysis, which is whether or not the defense was able to prove any factors that, by reasonable standard, that outweighs that is proven. If they say yes to that, then they move on to whether or not the question is, should he be put to death?
And we heard again and again, 17 times over the course of nearly an hour, the judge read that 1 or more jurors of the 12 found that there were mitigating factors established by the greater weight of the evidence. And then ultimately, again, repeated again and again, we, the jury, unanimously find, as they weighed aggravating factors against mitigating factors, do the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors? 17 times, no. And that means, under Florida law, without unanimity, that it is life in prison. The judge has no choice there.
That's absolutely correct, because again, the jury really didn't have the option of recommending life. Life is the default sentence. They only had the question as to whether or not he should be sentenced to death.
We are waiting, and Douglas Rudman, stand by. I believe we have Michelle Suskauer back live at our studio as you continue to look inside the courtroom. And you look on, I believe we're looking right there, or we're looking at Mike Satz, the lead prosecutor, Melissa McNeil, the lead defense attorney. I think she's the one with her back to us, Nikolas Cruz, sitting by throughout, conferring with his attorneys at times during the proceedings, the courtroom beginning to clear. But again, to be very clear, life in prison without the possibility of parole. Michelle Suskauer, our longtime WPTV News Channel 5 analyst, your reaction?
Well, you know, there was a lot, like Doug was saying, there was a lot to listen to, because there was a checklist that the jury had to go through on each of these victims. And the critical question, the last one, was, did the aggravating factors outweigh the mitigating factors? And when we heard no, I think everybody was taken aback, really, and there was silence. And then there was also confusion, because people thought, you know, is this life, is this death? Very, very tough situation for this jury. They took their time, but they didn't take days and days, but very difficult because of all the pressure on this jury. Now, the judge was ready to impose the sentence today, Michael, because the judge has to sentence him to life. But I think that the state really wanted these victims' families and other victims to be heard, and they have a right to be heard, even though it's not going to change anything here. That Nikolas Cruz will be getting life
and that's
in a couple
the
weeks.
point. And by the Michelle Suskauer, I'm just cutting in for a moment. We have a media room where some of the families have indicated they might speak after the recommendations. We'll see if that happens. Again, you at home saw it. Their faces, again, ran the gamut of the emotions from shock to disbelief and emotions that none of us can really actually imagine. There simply aren't words for it. Michelle, you've been our analyst for a long time. You said you're surprised. And I want to say, and I'll say to Douglas Rudman after you, a few days ago when Doug and I were streaming and talking about the possibilities, one viewer after another, as we streamed the discussion about what could happen, said, if it's not death here, then why is there a death penalty? Or why are we doing this trial? This should be an automatic slam dunk for the death penalty. Speak to that and to that reaction among many of our viewers the other day, and I'm sure right now.
That's the knee-jerk reaction that if you're
Michelle?
going to, that's the knee-jerk reaction that if you're going to have a death penalty, what other case would qualify for the death penalty? Multiple victims, young victims, the way that it was done in heinous, atrocious, and cruel manner, premeditated. But yet, this jury had to listen to a lot of evidence, and the defense did their job in this case. They did their job. Their job was to save their client's life, and they took a very calculated risk by skipping the first part, the guilt phase, and going right to the penalty phase so that they could really focus on their doctor's testimonies, which was critical here, to talk about his background and his mental health issues and the lack of prenatal care and the issues with his mother. So I think that was very significant, and obviously that spoke to the jurors.
They talked, Michelle, to add to that about fetal alcohol syndrome, that he was damaged even before birth, that he lived a life of neglect and abuse, and that even though the prosecution in rebuttal tried to counter that, saying that he was grossly exaggerating his mental condition, one or more jurors, we may never know under law, they don't have to tell us the number, only that one or more jurors found that one or more of those mitigating factors outweighed at the end of the day the aggravating factors. Douglas Rudman, former prosecutor, defense lawyer now, non-legal question, but were you surprised? Families certainly are sitting there in shock.
You know, I've been doing this long enough to know that, jurors do anything, juries do anything. I'm not necessarily surprised, because when you think about this, it's easy to watch the TV and watch the facts unfold from your house and say, he deserves death. But it's another thing to actually be a human being and put in that position to actually rule, and your decision is essentially for another human being to be put to death. And I think that's something that jurors take very seriously. And I think jurors, on a psychological point of view, really have to think to themselves whether or not they can live with that on their conscience if they are responsible for putting someone to death. And I've seen a lot of death penalty juries kind of voice that after they've been done.
And Douglas Rudman, about 5, and we've got brief time, then we're going to come back live if and when the families gather to speak in the media room up on the 17th floor. Very briefly, only about 5 hours of deliberation yesterday, and they were done. Very brief response.
Well, I think what happened is they're turning around and saying, hey, look, we've made our decision. We're not moving from it. And I think after 3 months, they came to it.
We will be back with the family news conference if indeed they do decide to speak in the media room. We'll have that continuing coverage. But life in prison for Nikolas Cruz in the Parkland case. 17 victims 4.5 years ago.